What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? Girl at work told me she hated her dad. I asked why. She said he keeps asking for money since she used his credit card for a Euro trip and left him an 80 grand bill from last year. First day as a librarian in a private school. Help a 7-year-old with the printer. He offers to tip me. My friend is a commercial pilot and works for a large company that has a flight department consisting of several jets and turboprop airplanes. The owner's kids, and a group of their friends, were granted permission to take one of the jets from the central part of the US to the Bahamas. Upon arriving in the Bahamas, they were meeting other friends and getting on a very large yacht for a week. They realized the yacht was equipped with fine dining food. Not the type of food they liked. Junk food. They ordered the pilots to fly back through US Customs and to their hometown in the Midwest. Once there, they had to pick up multiple sides of barbecue ribs, burgers, hot dogs, soda, beer and piles of other junk food and fly back to the Bahamas. And do so within a time frame that still allowed them to leave with the yacht on time. It costs roughly $5.00 an hour to operate the jet they were using. And it never even struck the owners as something extreme. Edit. Due to the popularity of this post, I called and got clarification on several points that have been repeatedly questioned. The barbecue, ribs, pulled pork and sauce was the main purpose for the return trip to the Midwest. If you're from the Midwest, or a southern barbecue city, you know what I'm talking about. They don't have this in Florida. Period. The other junk food was add-on requests from other guests. The plane owner's son had promised, in the months prior, to bring some of the barbecue he had told his other friends, who he was meeting in the Bahamas, about repeatedly throughout college. He forgot, and was catching hell for it. In an act of boldness, he sent the plane back for it. This is the most extreme example of how these planes are used and wealth flaunted within this company. That's with the understanding that wife shopping trips, sending a plane back to pick up a kid after school to come to Florida, ball games, hunting and fishing trips, and to dine in a restaurant 3,000 miles away is commonplace. On occasion, these planes and pilots have been used as angel flights, transport ill children and family throughout the country for medical procedures. The pilots for this company aren't paid the best, but are permitted to bring family, spouses mostly, to destinations as space and work schedule dictates. Some senior pilots can stay at company-owned property nationwide if available. Twins in high school. Birthday. I think it was 17. They get matching pickup trucks. Like the souped-up larger-than-life cool-as-fuck looking black ones. Twin A is the brat, and smashes his in some remarkable time frame. I want to say same day. It was crazy though. Parents decide not to get him another one, though I'm sure insurance probably covered it even if it was his fault. But regardless, he is going to learn a lesson. The lesson? Take Twin B's truck, he's the responsible one, and crash it on purpose. If he can't have one, neither can his brother. So much recklessness, spite, and downright illegal in what he did. Follow up. Not sure if he went to prison, etc. I do know he wasn't at school the next year, but he very well could have just dropped out. He was pretty sketchy. Twin B was actually a really good guy. But as soon as his brother was gone, he became very quiet. He did eventually get some sort of car, but I remember it was much more toned down to the point I can't remember what it even looked like. But he got something. There weren't many other rich kids at the school. So this whole story stuck out as a huge event when it happened. Humble rich kid. I was a club at my college town and my roommate's new friend who drove a Raptor was at the bar. I started shooting shit and we were getting along, so I offered to buy a Y-bomb, vodka Red Bull shot. Being as wealthy as he is, he said, "You don't have to do that, man, save your money. Round will be on me." I explained to him it didn't bother, I was having a good time, and insisted I buy the shot. Immediately after that, he pulls out a black Amex and purchases the nicest VIP booth in the club, around $3K. Then ask what drink packages they have and ask if he could buy 2 bottles on top of Max package. Looks at me and goes, tit for tat. Safe to say I don't recall much after that. I went to college with a guy who totaled 5 Mustangs in a year. I don't think he was sober enough to remember any of them. My personal favorite was in college. Kid down the hall from me bought a brand new Fender Stratocaster and played with it for a day and got bored and sold it to me, case and all, for $20. I still have it and play it 15 years later. It's a great guitar. When I was in college, a friend that was heavy in the frat life told me about a freshman that got kicked out for having a servant flown to town to do the hazing chores he was supposed to do. One time a college dorm mate next door was stressing his dad hadn't yet given him money for the month. And $1,000 wasn't going to last him for the week. Meanwhile, I'm having to donate plasma to afford my next meal. Life just be like that. Teacher here. 2 spring to mind. My first teaching job was at a private middle school in one of the wealthiest enclaves in the United States. I taught a kid who told me he didn't finish his homework because his helicopter had stalled over the weekend, so he couldn't leave his family's island. He was telling the truth. Same kid was also a huge pain in the ass who wanted to misbehave with the cool kids. And then would lie through his teeth while crying when held accountable. His parents knew he was a jerk and cared enough to bring me a case of wine from their vineyard as a gift every parent-teacher conference or before the holidays. But they didn't care enough to discipline their kid. I now teach at a private school in Europe, and I'm absolutely gobsmacked by how many parents are happy to pay $35K per year to dump their kids into boarding so they can do fuck all as students and repeat grades 1, 2, 3 times because they don't make any effort whatsoever. There was this rich kid in our class who was literally disgusted by us buying used stuff, like computer parts, on eBay. Once during conversation I said I bought on eBay memory module for my PC and said to me that I should have a little dignity. And if I buy used stuff I should keep it to myself. A 14-year-old in full volume cursing meltdown. Where the fuck is he? Because the pilot of the private helicopter that had brought him there had gone off to get a cup of coffee. The kid was done skiing for the day and found it totally unacceptable that he had to wait 10 minutes before he got flown home. I was that poor kid who ended up getting a scholarship to a ridiculous private school. The one thing that stood out massively for me was probably how much people cared about what everyone else's parents did. Like your parents' achievements counted for yourself. My daddy just brought a new plane. Yes, a literal statement. So what does your dad do? When I replied fuck all, they laughed and thought I was being cool about it. There's a lot of rich kids in my particular business program in university. I met this one girl a few months ago at a social. We were chatting a bit about our program and she proudly told me about how she threatens to sue the school whenever things don't go her way. She also said something to the effect of, they have to take the threat seriously because they know I actually have the means to follow through, haha. A girl in my school was surprised by her parents in the school's parking lot with a new BMW. A freaking BMW. Everyone who is out is basically watching this go down and she starts crying. At first we are all thinking it's because she's so happy, but then she runs back into the school. Apparently they were supposed to show up earlier, I'm assuming when there would be more students to witness the surprise. I felt bad for the dad because he looked totally embarrassed and sad about it. You know, in his head he's like, I created this monster. I really want a classic Jaguar E-Type convertible, but annoyingly you can only get secondhand ones. My college roommate's mom gave him fucking $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Ex-girlfriend's friend said to me, "Can you believe there are people who have never been on a private jet?" Yeah, I'm one of them. A Saudi guy in the UK got in a crash. With light damage to one side of brand new Mercedes. He called for one of his assistants to come get him. Even though the car was fully drivable. My friend rolled up on call with his tow truck and asked the guy where he wanted the Merc towed. The guy gave him the keys and said, "Keep it, I don't want it." GF family is wealthy. She's working her way to it. But she was waiting to get a chance for a promotion and the words, "I cannot believe anyone would make somebody work for almost a year to get a promotion," came out of her mouth. And I laughed. A long time ago I was dating a rich girl. Not insane rich, but rich enough. Well, I'm from Norway and we have a recycling system for plastic bottles. You get like 10 cents per bottle. Her family had a literal mountain of empty bottles and crates in their warehouse. They had a warehouse. I asked her dad, "What you gonna do with these?" For which he replied something like, "Oh, those are from our employee staff parties from a couple years back. I just haven't had the time to get rid of them." Logically I told him that I'd recycle them for a percentage. He said keep it all. Guy. So I did. I had to do multiple trips to several different stores. But it ended up being like $1,300 bucks. Which was insane money for me at the time. I bought a guitar for the money. I realize now it's not a crazy story. But for me it was insane to earn that much money for 4 to 5 hours of work because her family couldn't be arsed to do it. Edit. Some of you want to know what guitar I got. And it was a Squier Jagmaster. I know. Luckily I spent the rest on rent and weed. I was 20 or 21. So there you go. I was a catch. Kids trying to straight up bribe bouncers and even police officers. This is less surprising when you realize they were international students from rich families where bribes are common, expected. Thankfully, they'd learn really quick to not do that. I work in a jail. I always love when someone gets arrested and comes in screaming. Do you know who my dad, mom, grandpa, uncle is? He'll buy your entire jail. It's even better when their dad, mom, grandpa, uncle refuses to come bond them out. I had 2 friends in college who were from UAE. They were brothers. And their parents were sending them to school in the US. They were actually pretty cool and down to earth. If not a good bit weird. They knew I didn't have a ton of money and couldn't afford to do the cool stuff they did. So they covered me all the time. Crazy stuff. Like renting a private plane to go to a concert. Black cars with drivers. Expensive dinners in exclusive clubs. On the weird side, they slaughtered a goat in the bathtub to make a traditional Arabian dinner. And they wore far too much Draker. Sitting in a group discussion in college. And having one kid whine that his parents were so disadvantaged that they only brought home $500,000 a year, 20 years ago. I sat there and kept quiet. Because my family only had $30,000 a year. I was only there because of scholarships and financial aid. The worst thing is all of the sympathy this kid got from the other people in the class. The school was so proud of their racial diversity. But 95% of the students came from families in the top 1% of income. Girl I went to high school with got a Mercedes for her 16th birthday. Bitched and moaned about the fact that she didn't get a Lexus. Because her name was Lexi and she thought it would be so cool. For Lexi to drive a Lexus with a custom license plate saying Lexi. Her parents did cave and buy her a Lexus for her 17th birthday. My college roommate threw a massive tantrum. Like on the floor screaming and crying. Because her parents got her a used big-ass truck for graduation. It was a 2013 truck with less than 10k miles that was fully upgraded, loaded with every possible add-on. We graduated in 2014. The car was maybe a year old. She already had a 2009 Range Rover. Not exactly rich kid syndrome. But there was this family that had 2 children who attended the elementary school that was connected to my middle school. Every day the 2 parents would leave the house and drive separately to pick up their 2 kids before returning home. I should mention at this point that they each drove a Lamborghini. One black and one orange. Back to back in the pickup line to get their kids from elementary school. At first I thought they were just being showy. But then I realized that they were 2-seaters. So this was really the only way to do it. Dad bought his college-age daughter a house in a very nice neighborhood so that she and her friends could live rent-free while they attended university. He remodeled the entire house. In all, he probably spent close to $2 million. 2 weeks after moving in, they left a candle burning while they went to the store to get snacks for a football game. Came home and the house was on fire. A month later, it was good and new for them to move back in. I watched Rich Kids of Instagram on YouTube and am still recovering. Funny short story. My ex-wife used to drive a 1998 Honda Accord. She treated it like shit, and so one day I got into it to drive somewhere and I noticed that it was falling apart. I had 2 options, junkyard or sell it. And so I put it on Craigslist for $250. I thought it could go to a low-income family that had someone with some know-how who could semi-restore it. But when I meet the buyer, he was not who I expected. He pulled up in a brand new Escalade and told me that his son was spoiled. His son had crashed a BMW, Mercedes, and an Audi, and so he was done buying him nice cars. Turns out, this guy purchased my car as a way of torturing his son. Edit. Hot damn. I even got Reddit Silver as a result of selling that car. Thank you for the coin, stranger. Second edit. Of course this edit is to give a shout out to whoever gave me gold. Thank you. 3.5 years on Reddit and 47k in karma later and I got my first gold. Cheers. My rich cousin contends that the reason people are poor is because they're fat and lazy. If they took better care of their appearance, they too could be rich in a society based on first impressions and looking the part. I knew a chick in high school who threw a tantrum that the SUV her parents, new BTW, wasn't the right color. As a kid, I was piss poor. Like we had no money. And barely kept the lights on. My mother did an awesome job. And even worked 2 different jobs and went to night school at one point to make a better future for us. I grew up without a lot of things. But it taught me a lot about what you really need in life. Which is a roof over your head and food in your belly. Everything after that is a plus really. I had a lot of friends who were way better off than me. But one kid in particular had everything. He was a Jehovah's Witness. So didn't do birthdays, Christmas. But would often just get stuff to kind of make up for it. At times he would bitch his mother out for buying him something that he thought was crap or wasn't the right model of something. Despite getting loads of stuff which was awesome all the time. He was that kid that had all the games, consoles, toys in the world but would moan about it. One of the last times I hung out with him, he was shouting at his mother because she had promised him that she would buy him a new guitar. He was learning, but the time of the day had gotten late and she wasn't able to go. Like it was when all the stores were shut. So it was literally impossible. But this kid just kept chewing her out because of it. And speaking to her like she was some kind of moron. It was painful to watch. And I was like 14 at the time. I stopped hanging around with him after that. I later heard his mother cracked and had enough of him. Then kicked him out of the house. He later ended up being a shoplifter and lived in the local YMCA for a bit. In fairness, I think he's back on track now. But as a kid he was a bit of a dick to his parents. Not scathing like most of the ones on here. I grew up attending a private school in a developing country, so a lot of my classmates were in the 1% of the country. Whenever we'd be swimming in the school pool, one friend of ours in particular would always remark that swimming is more fun if the pool has a current or waves. To which I had no idea what he was talking about and generally thought he was just being imaginative. One day he invited me over to his house for swimming in. He had a 50-foot indoor pool that generated a current, waves. He wasn't lying. They are a lot more fun. My friend's mom owns a very big oil company and they make close to $3 million a year and he says he's middle class. Edit. They choose to take a salary of $3 million each year. The company makes at least 10x as much, so stop commenting about how it makes no sense. I wouldn't call him a friend. More of an acquaintance. He's not rich anymore, but he grew up with hella rich parents and was super spoiled and did drugs and drank all the time till he was 25-ish. Then got kicked out. Nowadays he lives on my buddy's couch and he's a nice enough guy, but he tends to get trashed, and when he's trashed he becomes an asshole. Breaks things, usually accidents. Sometimes on purpose. Gets real nasty. Sometimes starts physical fights. IDK how my friend deals with it. He also is slowly learning the value of $1. Before he would wreck a car his parents bought him and completely shrug it off cause they'd buy him a new one the next week. Nowadays he's at least a bit more financially aware even if he blows all his money on liquor. Edit. IDK how I forgot to mention this, but he's been arrested like 4 separate times. Mostly for being drunk in public. One such occasion was at like 3 a.m. when he was banging on the windows of a closed Taco Bell and the cops got called on him after he tripped the alarm somehow. And he's still trashed in his mugshot but smiling as if he just won $1 million. The dude is an enigma. Consequences are all but lost on him. Makes for some funny stories I suppose though. I was in a theology class where we were talking about compromises. Teacher. What are some compromises your parents have made? Very rich girl. My mom wanted to go to Hawaii and my dad wanted to go to Mexico, so we went to the Bahamas instead. Going to private school makes life full of these stories. Like earlier this week when I asked why this girl who I sit by was gone. Her friend then told me she's skipping this week because she wanted to go to the Bruno Mars and Pitbull concert in Hawaii. Or another one last year, this girl got too stressed out with school so she went to Lithuania with her dad for a month. I have no idea how she made up all her schoolwork. Had a kid that lived across the hall from me my freshman year of college from Honduras. During one of the icebreakers after freshman move-in he leaned to me to ask if I knew when the maids came to make his bed clean. I guess his family was very well off in his home country and the entire semester was an eye-opener for him in actually taking care of himself. I used to have a friend who would constantly say I love when my dad gives me money. And if I ask for a certain amount of money my parents always give me $50 extra. This girl then bought an apartment boasting about it on Facebook and how proud she was of herself, how at 23 she was able to afford a home at such a young age all on her own. Still makes me want to face plant into a pile of jagged rocks. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.